This episode of our This Week in XR podcast is sponsored by Zapper. Zapper is one of the world's leading XR companies. Over the past 12 years, they've won numerous awards for memorable campaigns. They've democratized AR by making tools and SDKs that anyone can use. And they created ZapBox, the world's most affordable mixed reality headset. Most recently, Zapper worked with Unilever to create an enhanced QR code called Accessible QR, which enables packaged goods to speak to the blind and partially sighted. If you're thinking XR, give the team at Zapper a call or visit zapper.com to see how they can help you on your XR journey.
So, Jake, thank you for putting me in to the... tell me the official name of the game.
Ghostbusters Rise of the Ghost Lord.
Ghostbusters Rise of the Ghost Lord. I'm looking at a poster of it right there.
Yeah.
Brand new game.
Yep.
Developed with a company out of the UK called N-Dreams.
That's right. N-Dreams developed the game. Game is releasing October 26th, so right in time for Halloween.
Right, so we're just a week away from it, basically.
Right there. Really excited about it.
Surprised you're still awake and alive and can even do this with me.
I made a special exception to get energized for you, Ted. That's what it was. No. We're having a blast. We're having a lot of fun. We're having a lot of fun with the team. We've been working on this one for 2.5 years. And, you know, what we've kind of come to is a very accessible, social, fun, multiplayer, bust ghosts with friends kind of game. Shoot 'em, trap 'em, squat up, suit up, do your missions, and it's coming out in just a couple days, and we're super excited for people to get play it.
That's great. So you're watching either the first or the second part of our This Week in XR interview. Likely what I think will happen is we went into the devices, into Quest 3s. You just got your Quest 3s, and you've been working with them and developing on them. And it's multi VR platform, right? So it runs on Quest 2, Quest 3,
PSVR 2, right?
PSVR 2, yeah.
Yep, exactly.
And what we just did is about 15 minutes of gameplay. We'll probably cut that down into something 5-6 minutes of that for our listeners. And then for those that want to watch it, we'll put some clips up of kind of some of the stuff we were looking at and some of the Twitch users that have been experimenting with the game and stuff. But now that we're just chatting about it, let's talk about the arc of virtual reality, what you think this game represents, because this is a very high quality, very polished, very finished, very long form game, right? I mean, and it's priced accordingly. It's not a mini game.
It's a premium game.
Can you mention the retail price of it for?
Sure. So right now it's in pre-orders, so it's discounted. It's about 10% off, but the base SKU pricing will be $34.99 US, and we have what's called the full containment edition, which is basically the base game plus 6 months of DLC. So it's 4 equipment skins and 10 plus avatar skins and a Slimer hunt mode and other surprises that we haven't announced yet. And that is $54.99.
So if you're a fan of Ghostbusters, legitimately want to live in that world, this will be a better value for you if you're going to live in this game.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, it's a game that we're going to support after launch. This is a big piece of the strategy is launch the game. The game will, you know, it'll launch. It's fun. It's accessible. Over 40 missions right now. But we're adding much more.
40 missions. That's a lot.
Yeah.
So
different variations. Different environments. There's an extreme mode mission, which is really hard. Don't do that if you're just starting. And then on the Quest 3 platforms, it's got this mixed reality game called Mini Puff Mayhem.
Right, which we want to talk about. Before we talk about that, explain your role for our listeners, what you do here at Sony. So we're on one of the storied historic lots. I work on one in Hollywood. You work on one in Culver City, and we get to visit each other from time to time. We both work for different movie studios, but we're friends and colleagues, and we do our best to help each other achieve trajectory and forward progress in the worlds of mixed reality and virtual reality. So
that's right.
Tell us what your role is at Sony.
So I'm Jake Zim. I run Sony Pictures VR, which is the publishing arm of the Sony Pictures virtual reality business. So what we're focused on is taking the great Sony IPs that exist, Ghostbusters being a perfect example, and developing new ways to offer them to audiences in cool interactive gaming platforms such as VR.
And because Sony obviously has a massive success point with gaming, with PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5 now, I mean all the way back to PlayStation 1, right? You have a massive worldwide audience. I would say out of all the major studios, you are the one that's most focused as a business on interactive entertainment in the gaming world. So it makes very logical sense that you're pursuing this with gusto. But it's still a much smaller business than the console gaming business.
Of course, it is. It's a growth business. I mean, that's how we always see it. And I think the idea from a Sony corporate standpoint is this really fits into the mantra of creating great content leveraged by great technology, right? So amazing new technologies like virtual reality can offer creators a chance to design new experiences. And when it comes to IP, what's a better way to expand IP than on interactive platforms that let you feel like you're in the world?
An IP that everybody really knows and has tremendous amount of lore to it.
Exactly.
Like, who doesn't love Ghostbusters?
Who doesn't love Ghostbusters? Exactly.
So let's talk about the mixed reality part of this.
Okay.
So I got a chance to go, as you did as well, a few weeks ago, to the Meta Quest event, the Oculus Connect event, or the Meta Connect, but whatever.
I think it's Meta Connect.
Whatever they call it now.
Right.
I still can't remember what people change names. Is Twitter still called Twitter? Apparently not. It's X. And does anybody call
That's
it X?
another podcast, by the way.
Yeah, that's another podcast. So we got a chance to be there, and you were fortunate enough to be able to demonstrate for some of the developers and some of us studio folks at the conference a part of this game, which is a mixed reality mini Marshmallow Men game. So tell us about that, how that came to life, and what devices it works on. Because this is obviously the device they're focusing on, right? Because of its mixed reality capabilities.
So, when we first got a sense from Meta that mixed reality and pass-through was going to be important to them, and we're partners with Meta, and we're obviously partners with PlayStation, the question was, okay, what can we do with this technology that fit into the Ghostbusters world, that layered in nicely to the game that we have been developing for 2.5+ years, and how can that be something that highlights the features of this new headset while still being a really fun game for people to play. Right. So the team came up with this concept of Mini Puff Mayhem.
Mini Puff Mayhem.
Mini Puff Mayhem, MPM, and the Mini Puffs, as you know, the Stay Puffs.
I got a chance to play it.
Of course, right? And the Mini Puffs played a big role in the last Ghostbusters movie, Afterlife. Mm-hmm. And they're a beloved set.
And they're adorable.
They're adorable, but they're also they get an attitude.
Dangerous.
Yeah, be careful.
Yeah.
So in the game, the team had actually designed a mechanic where if you're moving through missions and you happen to see one of these Stay Puft marshmallow bags that spawn sort of randomly throughout the game on countertops and tables, and you go up and pick them up, these mini puffs will pop out of there and they'll just gum you up. Right. And they get into your Proton wand, they get all of your hands. You gotta, in classic VR interactive,
you gotta extract yourself.
You gotta extract yourself, or you gotta extract your friends, because they block you from doing your mission. And so the idea was to take that concept and figure out a mixed reality game that played on the idea of the mini puffs. And so the team came up with this really cool idea where, with mixed reality, you're in your physical space, you set your room, you define your walls and your ceiling.
Yeah, which is a pretty quick and relatively seamless process compared to previous attempts at it, where it was really clunky, it never worked. They really, you got to give credit where credit is due. They put a tremendous amount of resources into making mixed reality use case viable in a home. Yeah. So if we were in a living room and you and I had one of these devices and you would put it on and it would actually do the work for you, and it would be pretty correct. Now the lighting conditions you have to be a little careful of. This is kind of perfect lighting, but you have to be careful about bright windows and stuff. But for the most part, it's going to work in most of your home environments. And the amazing thing about mixed reality gaming is you get a sense of being grounded at the same time you're having fun. You're not kind of lost in it. Which is interesting.
That's a really interesting touch point about, I think, the future of mixed reality and why it's important to our space. But from a game design standpoint, what happens is you set up your room and you initiate the game from the menu screen of the Ghostbusters Rise of the Ghost Lord game. So you've purchased the Ghostbusters Rise of the Ghost Lord game, you've played it a couple times, you go to your menu screen and there's a bunch of little mini puff marshmallows in the menu screen moving around. You click on it.
And this is in the game that you're going to buy.
This is all inside the game, Rise of the Ghost Lord.
Right.
And then what happens is your room starts to be inundated with these floating little mini puff guys. They come up to you.
Which I saw and experienced, and it was phenomenal.
And it seems really fun and kind of, peaceful at first. You can grab them, you can look at them, you can throw them. But over time, there becomes more and more of them. And I'm going to explain. I'm going to give it away here a little bit, but I think that's okay. The roof opens, and there's what we call a mega puff. So he's not the huge Stay Puft guy from the verse. So he's sort of in between, because scale matters.
He's like the mama bear.
There you go.
Not the papa bear.
Right, he's not the papa bear. He's sort of he's the mama bear, right, exactly. Yeah. And he's angry. And so you pull out this proton slingshot that we made in conjunction with Ghost Corp. Really cool, the creators of Ghost Corp. and you grab a mini puff, you put them in your slingshot, and you just fire.
So that becomes your ammo, and they're floating all around your world, and it's a really cool experience. Like I did it in a conference room at Meta headquarters. Right?
Yeah.
So, but in a home environment where you're so used to seeing your ceiling, and then the ceiling tears away, and here comes the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, like leaning into your room, is a really great experience.
It's a lot of fun. So the point is to defeat the big guy and use the mini puffs, and there's little ones that carry little projectiles that you can grab out of the air and hit him in his eyes and his mouth.
You have to splat him. So
exactly.
And it's a real mechanic. You're pulling back with the controller, right? So
yep.
You're using it like this, and you're holding the other controller to be sort of the front of the slingshot.
That's right. That's right.
And you're kind of doing your thing. It's really engaging and a lot of fun. And now, as you're explaining to me, that's a part of this much, much bigger world where there's all these missions and you're moving through all these different areas to go and catch all these ghosts. And so you're really kind of living the movie. Like you're experiencing what Bill Murray and friends got a chance to do that many years ago, of actually catching these ghosts in these traps and dealing with the ecto and all that stuff.
That's where we always start. What is the fantasy that we're trying to fulfill for the player? What's the fantasy of Ghostbusters that we really want to start with, and how do we build that into a game? And that starts ultimately with pulling the proton wand over your
doing
shoulder,
exactly what you saw in the movie. Yeah.
Trapping ghosts, working as a team, high-fiving, having fun, a little bit of scare, but always a laugh. So the core brand elements of Ghostbusters, we wanted to make sure that was infused in.
Okay. So with 5 minutes or so, let's talk a little broader about certainly our long-standing relationship and paying attention to this market, working to cultivate this market appropriately. I think you and I have a lot of common ground on this is a long road to finding different audiences and growing devices. And we've seen, I think we talk about every 18 months you kind of get 18 months to 2.5 years, you get sort of the next level of technology, right? Now we've got a device like this, completely wireless, the next-gen Qualcomm chip, full mixed reality capabilities and color, and relatively inexpensive.
And really good pass-through.
Really good pass-through. And you're talking about, even at the highest-end version that most people will buy, it's sub $700, right? So that's pretty affordable for people. And do you think we're on the right track with this stuff? Do you think we're going to see more games like what you're building? Are more and more studios? We work for two studios that are involved in this and believe in it. But I think people believe in it in different ways, right? So the question is, are we heading in the right direction? Because there's a lot of listeners that know you and have been tracking you from the very first VR games you built, and even before the initial PSVR was released.
Yeah.
And just that whole trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think we're actually at a point in the industry, and you've described this several times, sort of a step process.
Step function? Yeah.
Step function. I think we're actually at a point where it's going to be a nice little, the steps aren't going to be quite as fast in major design iterations. I think we're getting things like eye tracking, certainly in the PSVR 2, eye tracking opens up more game design opportunities, more experiential opportunities. High quality pass-through opens up more collaboration, accessibility, also game design opportunities. And I think some of those core tenets of technology that are now imbued in these headsets are going to give our developers, who really are the core of the whole ecosystem, a chance to spend some time and catch up, actually, and even get ahead of some of the functionality opportunities that we may not even know about right now. So I think mixed reality as a concept, and certainly Roni knows this extremely well, was always a big idea that had a lot of creative ideation around it, an opportunity. And now that we're starting to see it in relatively affordable hardware that people are going to get a chance to play with, I think we're just going to be in a space where the creative updates that we're going to see are just going to surprise and astound us. And ultimately that comes down to the developer community. And do they get enough time with these things? Do they get enough window? Do they have enough,
And can they make a go at it? Economically,
does it make sense economically?
Can they build these things and put them out into the world? And I think we're seeing more and more of that. I think, your commitment on the Sony side, Meta's commitment on the Quest side is forward-thinking, putting lots of capital in and seeing only some degree of return on that capital, right?
Yeah.
But the long-term belief structure is this is an important part of a gaming and a social infrastructure that's going to matter a lot and continues to grow.
I think Apple really kind of pushed the ball forward in the conversation when they made their announcement, which we'd all sort of been anticipating.
We talked about it a lot on the podcast.
Yep, and you guys have had some great conversations about it. I've listened, and I also think just the concept of they've kind of push the term spatial computing, which I totally understand. Visual computing, which is another version of that, to me, and I think to the believers in this space and the folks that are putting the capital in and investing in it, it really is, that is the next platform. And, the generations that it will take of hardware, of software, of operating systems, of educating the audience.
To say, when we say crack the many codes that have to be cracked.
It's a lot of
We're all sort of safe crackers for a living.
Yeah.
We've cracked a few safes, but
Yeah.
there are a lot more safes, certainly with what Apple has put into the marketplace and their kind of DNA core, which is different than Meta, different than Sony. You're going to have a lot of different things that help kind of round out this ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's exciting.
So I think, for me, we're going the right direction. I think everyone always has to, take a step back, look at the perspective, look at the bigger picture here, understand that different companies have different trajectories. Sony, PlayStation's trajectory on iterating on hardware is a lot different than Meta's.
Sure.
Different cultures. Apple's going to come in at a different angle. But what I like about it is I think we're starting to fill in the different facets, both in the messaging, both in the approach from a pricing standpoint. But I do believe that there is a fundamental understanding that visual computing, spatial computing, headset-based computing, whatever you want to call it, is a viable and formidable future platform.
The forward press on this is not going to stop.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, and I know Charlie and Roni will be talking about this before we do our interview here separately, and then what we probably will do is have you back on. We'll give a couple months for the dust to settle. I know you're burning the midnight oil, getting everything ready for launch, to see how things are going with the adoption and with gameplay and user response. It would be fun to have you on maybe early in the year. Early in 2024.
Perfect.
Kind of post-CES.
Sure.
Get through our CES bubble.
Yeah.
The one last thing I want to talk about, and then I'll hand it back to the guys back in the studio since I'm not there today, is the other, what I would consider AAA game on the PSVR 2 is the Horizon game. Which Horizon Call of the Mountain, which I think is phenomenal. And its design quotient and its feel of what you do and some of the mechanics of climbing and moving and accomplishing those goals are ridiculously well put together and thought out. So maybe put a comment on that, because that's been out for a little while.
Yeah, it was a launch title.
And I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that title and how that's going. Something that's already been out in the wild on the PSVR 2.
Sure. Well, I would say there's actually a lot of amazing games on PSVR 2.
Good. This is where I wanted to go with this.
Yeah, and Call of the Mountain, which, Guerrilla Studios in Amsterdam, working with Fire Sprite on that, to take it from the world of Horizon and to translate it into a VR game of that kind of high fidelity.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel like a translation. It feels very VR native to me.
You're right, and they really took the world of Horizon and Aloy and
the water
characters.
sequence at the beginning is amazing. It's really cool.
And I think it is, to me, it is just a toe dip in the water of what can be accomplished when you focus on high quality gameplay, world building, really leveraging what's best in VR, climbing, shooting, grappling, combat, all the mechanics. The NPCs in that game are amazing. When you lean into the characters, in the little town gathering areas, and they kind of look at you askew, like, why are you getting so close to me? The artwork is amazing. So I think it's a great example, and I think what it portends to is when you get AAA titles and AAA teams working together with folks who really know VR, because that's the other thing. VR developers, I think, are a unique breed, and have those who have spent the time in this space and kind of gone through the tough days and push products and know what
the dark
it's like.
days of VR.
I think those folks are really getting rewarded now with opportunities. That's certainly our goal, is to work with developers who really know the space, and ideally the IP just gets more and more juicy for them to work with, more robust.
So as we wrap up, you said there's a lot of really good games on PSVR system. What's your call-outs? What do you want our listeners to go check out?
Well, Gran Turismo, I think it just demonstrates to anybody who was a naysayer about driving in VR that it can be done.
Do it, and it doesn't get you sick.
It doesn't get you sick, and I think that's a big learning for people to sort of overcome. Shout out to Synapse, which is another Endreams game, which single player roguelike game where you're doing all kinds of amazing telekinesis, shooter stealth stuff. That's great. There's a lot of great games, I think, that are even coming. I can't talk about.
Well, that's what we'll have you on again.
Have me on again on that. And I will give a shout out to my kid's favorite game, And if Lemming is listening, Gorilla Tag, which
Gorilla
is
Tag, sure.
appointment gaming at my house.
Yes. Gorilla Tag has become a sensation.
It's amazing, and I look at that
as
as
almost Beat Saber level kind of insanity of people that really dig it, and and it was an indie sort of build out.
It was an app lab,
self-designed kind of thing, no budget kind of thing, and
amazing.
Talk about cracking the code.
But
right?
what I think it does, to me, I look at my kids who literally come home, they do their homework,
and they want to go play Gorilla Tag.
They play Gorilla Tag with their buddies. They get into lobbies. They play with their buddies. They set up a private room, and they play as if they were playing outside, playing tag. These are LA kids. They don't run around in the street. They unfortunately, right? They're playing tag.
This is their version of tag.
This is tag. It's a primal,
simple,
amazing experience. So, Lemming, if you're listening, my kids want to know when
when the next upgrade's
when
coming.
the next upgrade is coming. Anyway.
Good. All right, Jake. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted.
Appreciate it, and I appreciate your camaraderie.
Of course.
And always seeing you at different events and things that we do together. We always seem to have this kind of like internal kind of clock where we're looking at it. Yeah, we're on the right track.
Absolutely.
Something's happening here.
Absolutely, man.
We're definitely part of the OG crew. So to wrap up this week's This Week in XR, and I will be back next week with the gang. And my special thanks to Jake for doing our very first sort of impromptu off-site,
That was fun, right?
Yeah, we did it in a different way. So hopefully this works out.
Thanks so much for having me.